So I decided after 15 years I was going to finally face my demons and start cracking into my first bike, my 1984 Honda VF500F Interceptor. So I bought this bike when I was 17 for $1,600. Went in, started looking for CBRs or Katanas or something like that, and fell in love with this goofy looking yellow thing that was there, and ended up buying this. And this bike has treated me awesome. It has run like a champ the entire time I've been on it. I bought it with 12,400 miles on it. I think it's got about 21,000 on it now, and I've been wanting to go through and do a refresh on this thing, but I never felt comfortable enough, so I ended up buying the FCR as a spare bike. I got that for $900, so I'd have something to wrench on. Started cutting into that thing, started to get used to bikes a little bit, but then I didn't want to screw that thing up, so I ended up buying that CL350 over there to really tear an entire bike apart. Started putting that thing together, started collecting other bikes, and kept putting this thing off because I was too afraid to actually get into it because it's so much more complex than most bikes you end up finding. And so over the course of the years, I ended up really over the course of the last 3 years after I moved into this house, I started pulling things off of this bike and looking at it as I started to learn a couple more things about motorcycles. Not that I know that much, but I know more than I did 3 years ago. I kept seeing more and more potential problems. So I kept pulling things off, and all of a sudden I ended up with this non-running bike because I'd pulled too much shit off of it. And so I've just been putting it off, and the guilt has finally gotten to me, and I hate seeing it here not running. So it's time I'm getting into this thing. So the big thing that I'm getting prepared to do right now, why it doesn't have any of its clothes on it, is missing a bunch of parts, and I've actually got a full fairing kit for it. My understanding is it's an aftermarket fairing, and I still am not 100% certain of which fairing it is, but it looks freaking cool on this thing. And most people, if they see this once it's all dressed up, have no idea that this bike, it's 4 years older than I am. I'm 32. This bike is 36 years old. It was probably manufactured in '83. So yeah. It's an oldie, but it's a goodie. It's got a 25-foot paint job on it for sure. The camera does it more justice than it deserves because I'm pretty sure that the previous owner sprayed it while it was on the bike. And not a lot of people know who the previous owner of their bikes are, but I do. It was Ken McKee. I know that because he scratched his name right in the fucking gas tank. Anyway, so I got Ken to thank for this. So what I'm doing in this video is I'm putting together a list of shopping parts for this bike, and this list, it's getting big, and this is going to be a big ass hit to my wallet, and it's not going to make the bike look any cooler because I'm just going maintenance items on this thing, and rubber, as it ages, it starts to get brittle and starts to fail and whatnot, and rubber seems to be a big thing. I'm worried this thing's going to cost $800 in just the maintenance items. So what I've been doing over here is going through, and the big things are brakes, forks, ignition, electric, engine, fuel tank, fueling, exhaust, clutch, and fuel air, coolant system, and miscellaneous. So where I'm at right now is I've been taking apart the brakes, and I've got them all cleaned up. I've got stainless steel lines on the way. I've ordered those. This is something I'm a little bit worried about. I actually started I started an introduction post on VF World, which is a great forum. I've been lurking on it for many years. Actually, I'd posted about 6 posts back in 2008 after I bought the bike, and I haven't posted since, but I've been always watching it. So it's kind of funny to go back and look at those posts now because I sound like a little entitled brat. I still am, but I sounded worse then. So I got all the pistons out, and what kind of sucks, but why it's good that I posted on there is because I always thought these were stainless. They're not, and some of them cleaned up pretty well, and I haven't done a full polish on these, but this one's absolutely reusable, especially once I get it cleaned up. But they're not stainless, they just have a coating on them, and this one has pitting on it. So this is basically a trash piston, and I got to replace all these, which stinks. Also, these sleeves inside of here, this one cleaned up all right. It still should probably be replaced. This one sure as hell did not, and it ended up eating all the rubber boots and everything. And I've got new seals and whatnot for all of that. So yeah, with the brakes, I'm going to end up replacing all the seals and boots. Luckily on the VF, the front two calipers are identical to the rear, so you can get 3 matching sets. And all of this rubber on the old ones, I actually ended up having to destroy all of them to get them out. So that's just what it is. With the brakes, I'm going to rebuild the master cylinder, even though there's nothing that tells me I have to, and I'm actually missing one part. I'm looking at this, and I got this buildup right here. I don't know if this happened after I bled the brakes, but you can see, I mean, it's a hydrophilic liquid, in that it's going to absorb water, and then it looks like it crystallized out there. So anyway, I'm leaving the brake lines on here for now, so I know how to reroute them. I bought a 3-piece stainless steel set that's going to end up going in there, but I'm going to rebuild the master cylinder on this side. I don't think I'm going to rebuild the master on the clutch. I'll get to that in a second, but and that's pretty much it for the brakes. Yeah, there's potentially, I'm guessing, $150 more at least if I gotta buy these. One of the big things on this bike is that just parts are expensive for it because there's not so many of these things around. It's not like working on the Bandit where there's freaking 3 million of those things riding around. There's just a lot less of these 500 V4s because they only made these things for 3 years, and the 86 was different than the 84 and 85 versions, so there's not 100% interchangeable parts on those things. The forks, this has been the biggest source of hatred for me on this bike. Many problems I've run into. The first one being that inside of this one, the goddamn circlip rusted through. It's one of these. The circlip absolutely, completely rusted through. So as soon as I put a set of snap ring pliers inside of it, it just snapped off. So there was no way to get the damn thing out. And I ended up having to buy this frickin' $40 thing because nothing else fits into these forks. Now this thing's awesome, but it was expensive. And it doesn't have a replaceable tip, so I'm thinking if you break one of those, well, you get to toss this whole thing. But I did buy these, so this fork is fully rebuilt. I think I made a YouTube post about it before. This one isn't, because that snap ring's still stuck in there. So I was told, drill through this thing, see if you could break up that snap ring. There's holes all around this thing. I didn't make any progress on there, so this is a trash fork. I'm going to be throwing that one away. So what I did is I ended up buying a second set of forks. Second point of hatred. The forks I bought, these things, this bolt in the bottom completely rounded out. I could not break it loose. I'm going to go buy a Ryobi impact wrench tomorrow. And this is stupid of me. What I've heard though is that you can hammer in a Torx bit into one of these, into an Allen, and sometimes you can break them loose if you've got a good impact wrench on there. Break them loose, but I've got the wrong size Torx. I had this thing sitting in Evaporust for a month. I was pooling PB Blaster up on top here, just suspending this for a month. Heat cycles with the torch and everything. I cannot break it loose. So I may just have 2 more sets of trash forks. Oh, and this one I even started to try to drill through to break the threads, just to drill all the way through it. And I don't have the right set of tools for that, so likely I wasted a bunch of money on those forks. I'm probably just to save myself the goddamn hassle, because I'm out of things to try. If the impact wrench with the Torx bit doesn't work, I'm gonna buy another set, and I'm gonna make them pull that fucking bolt out first, or else I'm not buying it. So then if we go on to the ignition and electric, I need to do the spark plugs. I just found out I actually have like 15 spark plugs because somebody gave them to me. I didn't know which ones I had. Now I figured it out. It's for the Interceptor. I ended up buying 4 more of them. This coil plug number 3 is good, but 1 isn't. I noticed this when I pulled them out. It's missing the boot. So I thought, I picked this thing up on 4-into-1, and I was thinking maybe I could put this thing onto here because I got it for like $3. But I don't think I can get this thing off of here. So I might just be buying a whole new coil cover. I mean, it was running fine with it, and it will still run fine with it, but it's going to end up pooling water on there. And I mean, you can already see it if you walk over to it. That spark plug there is rusting. Well, so is that one, because the boots aren't doing their job, because, well, they're old ass boots and they need to be replaced. New battery, just filled it up this week, got it ready to go. Lead acid Yausa battery, or however the hell you say it. And then everywhere on this bike, because it's old, 38 years old, just everything needs to be re-jacketed, essentially. So all this stuff I'm gonna go through, try to re-jacket as much of it as I can, redo the terminals if I need to, and just get it better, just so it's ready for the next 38 years. If I do it once and I do it once right, then I won't have to do it again in 2 years. So normally I take all my projects way too quickly, and that's a problem of mine. This one I've been telling myself I have indefinitely, but realistically I want to finish this by May, which is way quicker than way longer than I finish any of these things. I want to get into all of it at once. But one of my cardinal rules is don't start more than one project at a time. And I'm essentially starting 20 different projects on this. So I'm trying to give myself enough time. There is no deadline on this. I want to do it right. So on the right here, I'm just writing down all the different parts that I need. We go into the engine, the big thing, valve adjustment. You read about the valve adjustment. The valve adjustment on these are scary. They're scary. The valve adjustment, these are tap it with a lock nut on them. So it's actually no different than the Suzuki Bandit GSF 600 that I just did. In theory, it's honestly the exact same thing, which is why I feel more comfortable after having done the Bandit, because this is going to be the same thing. However, not the clearances are different, but the access is so much more difficult on this bike that it's just going to be tough, because it's a V4. Now that front set of pistons, cylinders, isn't going to be nearly as bad. And you can actually tell somebody's been in here before, because this has been resealed. It didn't come from Honda like that. And actually Ken McKee was probably racing this bike, and I think Ken McKee did a damn good job of taking care of this bike, because I should have never even started messing with it. It worked perfectly fine. But there is not a single video of anybody doing the valves of this bike on YouTube. And there's a lot of threads on VFR. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. There's not that many. There's just not a lot of information on doing the valves outside of, it's really hard and a lot of shops won't do it. They'll turn it away because the labor's too much on doing it. So, I mean, I've got the whole coolant system off and everything. Honestly, it doesn't even look like it's that much more to take the entire engine out of the bike. But I'm gonna do the fucking valves on this, and I'm gonna do my goddamn best to take a video of doing a valve job on this, not a valve job, sorry, a valve adjustment on this bike. Just so that if anybody else is in my position, even if I don't do it right, at least you get a reference in a high definition video of what it looks like, and then you can make, adjustments to whatever mistakes that I make on doing it. So yeah, the valve adjustment is the big thing. That's what I'm really preparing for now. Gaskets all around. I should have bought the engine gasket set, considering I spent $200 and I already got the free shipping if I would have put it on this thing. So now I got to put another $200 together. I need an oil filter. I'll do an oil change. I put yeah, I run WD-40. Rotella 15W40 in everything, and everything has been working fine. And I bought an Allen bolt kit, but this one actually has hex on them, so not so bad. Not like it has, Phillips head or JIS bit things on it. The petcock on this tank, and like I said, 25-foot paint job, looks cool from a distance, especially when it's all dressed up in yellow. But I mean, you got bubbling here, you got these giant ass cracks here. This paint is like, I don't know, 20 mils thick. I don't know if it was sprayed through an airless gun or something like that. And it was sprayed with everything on the bike. Evidence is all over the place. If you look at that line doesn't get painted on accident. If you come over here and look at the sprocket bolts, those don't get painted if somebody took it to a paint shop. It's all over the place. The brakes have it on them. There's paint all over the thing. They did make it very yellow though, and I love yellow. It's my favorite color. It's gonna go back to yellow. I was thinking I was gonna go primary black with yellow accent, but then I was looking at old pictures when I went back onto VFR World of the pictures I put on there back in 2008, and no, it needs to remain yellow. So yellow bike it is. On the fuel tank, I have run Evaporust I've let Evaporust sit in this thing and derusted as much of the tank as I could. My dad and I, years and years and years, probably 10 years ago, this thing was leaking from the gasket on there. We cut a cork gasket. I still think it leaks a little bit, so I'm going to just buy an actual correct gasket for that. The vacuum line, and honestly most of the rubber on this thing need to go. It's a vacuum operated petcock, but one thing about this one that I love compared to the fucking Bandit is that it has an off position. It's not on res prime, it's on res off. I like off. Off is good for me, always. The exhaust on this bike is awesome. It is an aftermarket exhaust. It is a Vance & Hines exhaust on it. Here's the mufflers on here. I grabbed the damn, I grabbed the wrong one. What I'm gonna do with the exhaust is, well, one thing I'm gonna do, I'm not doing aesthetics on this, but I already got these things off and I was just looking at it, and I got VHT paint, and I've done this bike before. And this one I cured with it on the bike by running it through heat cycles. But this will fit in my oven upstairs. And the oven goes up to 500 degrees and I can cure this thing. So what I'm gonna do is sand all this down and just get this, I'm just gonna paint this thing black so it matches. And I've actually got some of these parts actually look way better than the others because I was working at a trade show many years ago and there was an infrared oven and I was running a powder coating operation. So I just powder coated all the parts that I could take off of this bike and did them while I was working there. So those things look good. The rest of the bike is pretty old. The big problem with this is that while the exhaust sounds way better than the original, this exhaust does not come with a bump stop for the center stand. This bike comes with a center stand, but mine didn't have one on it. I bought one on eBay and I was like, why the hell didn't they have this thing on it? Well, this center stand doesn't have a bump stop. It runs right into the goddamn chain. So either I have to figure out how to put a bump stop on this thing, and I don't have any welding skills or anything like that. There are other ways to probably do it. There's not gonna be a pretty way to do it, but there are probably other ways to do it. Or when I'm done, I gotta take the center stand off and just use a swing arm stand, but I really, really, really like having a center stand and I don't wanna give it up. I just don't. I really like having the center stand, so I'm probably gonna figure something out for that. Clutch. The clutch is a hydraulic clutch on this thing. It's the only bike I have with a hydraulic clutch, and I don't think there's a whole lot of bikes with hydraulic clutches. It's just another point of complexity that you get with this Honda V4. These things, especially the bigger brother, the VFR 700 or 750, and then the American 700, and then to the 1000 with the gear-driven cams. Those were super complex machines, but this thing they didn't simplify too much on this, and it got a lot of the goodies, including a hydraulic clutch, which just throws more wrenches into it, because instead of, you know, just having a cable that operates a clutch, now I've got a whole nother hydraulic line. And I remember in the past finding fluid on this part of the bike and that part. There's a breather hose here when the air filter's on it that I think was dripping onto here because I'd never drained the thing out, and who knows if anybody else did. So I think that's what it was. But I actually ended up stripping one of those valve cover bolts because I was trying to tighten down on this thing because I thought it was coming from up here because I didn't know what the fuck was happening and I'm an idiot. And I ended up stripping one of these things out. So I've actually gotten it to this point before in the past because I had to left-handed thread screw one of those out and put another one on. But I've seen fluid down here and I don't know where it's from. It could be from the water pump, it could be from the clutch, or it could be from something else. It could be from that petcock. From that gasket that's failing on there, dripping down over to here. Basically, it's just more complexity, and I can't rule out the clutch, so I'm going to rebuild, not the master, but the actual mechanism in here, within the hydraulic clutch. I guess that would be the slave cylinder, right? Yeah, the hydraulic slave right in there. Gaskets inside of there, and I want to get a gasket for the water pump. This water pump has actually been replaced. I don't really remember it because I was 17 or 18 and my dad did it for me. But I do have 2 old water pumps in this box. And I have known people over the years with Interceptors, and then they've gotten rid of Interceptors, and then they just give me their old parts. So I've been trying to do a really good job of, I know which parts are mine and which parts are theirs. And I know I ended up with this engine, and This thing's actually hilarious. I don't know if you could see it, but this thing actually still spins fine. But what in the world happened there? That's insane. So I do have like part of an old engine. Actually, this has to be an 86 because it's got a bigger oil sump than mine. And I have heard of people switching that oil sump, or the 86 oil sump, onto the 84. It's not as easy as just taking it off and putting it on. There's a couple other things you have to do, but it's a bigger capacity. So if you wanted to actually increase the oil capacity on that, that is the one useful thing that's on there. Actually, well, who knows how they wrote it, but the clutch discs may be good. But my guess is they rode that thing pretty hard to blow up a cylinder like that, or a piston like that. So we're almost at the end. Fuel air, carb intake boots. I have had this carburetor off, and this is another thing that I keep reading about, is that shops turn these bikes away because these carburetors are such a pain in the balls to work on, and something a lot of people struggle with. Luckily, I didn't when I took them off, is actually getting them out of these boots, and god damn it. I'm seeing a crack. I should replace those boots. These boots are probably gonna cost 50 bucks a piece. It's gonna be 200 fucking bucks in rubber. I just know it. The Bandit was 136 for 4 of them. The FCR was 10 bucks a piece because I bought them from India. But I can get this thing off. I'm pretty comfortable in it. If you are doing the carburetors on this, do not take them off this plenum when you pull this thing out. Unless you have a really good reason to remove each individual carburetor from the plenum, don't take them off. Keep them on the plenum, clean them on the plenum. But those boots, I should probably replace those. And now that I'm seeing that crack right there, it is still 38-year-old rubber, and it's had a lot of crap go through it. Fuel, air, and whatever else came through that air filter. Yeah, I should probably do those, which means I'm probably taking this thing off. I bought some pry bars from Harbor Freight. There's that little lip there, and actually that's a great pry spot. It's just, it's tough because the V4 fits in like this, and it's really hard to situate them. And if you have hard or broken up intake boots, you're just never gonna get that thing in, not without some, I've actually seen people use a ratchet strap around these things to kind of force them in, and that may end up having to be, that's why I don't want to pull the thing off if I don't have to. It doesn't look like you have to pull it off if you're gonna do the valve job. It looks like I have plenty of clearance. I shouldn't say plenty of clearance, but enough clearance with it on there. But now that I'm looking at it, if I end up buying the intake boots, that thing's got to come off. Speaking of valves, I had this Motion Pro tool. I actually bought it for this. This thing worked perfect for the Bandit. I don't know if it's going to be deep enough to work on this bike, but this 8mm with the 3mm square inside, that thing should be good. Replace the fuel lines. Still not certain if that's something I'm going to be doing, because there's nothing wrong with the fuel lines. I did replace this fuel filter about 5,000 miles ago. Granted, that was about 6 or 7 years ago, but it was about 5,000 miles ago. Obviously, these are old and very hard, but it's still gonna work well. And it might just, I don't know if I have to replace it. I think it's still gonna work fine if I leave it. So I might not be replacing the fuel lines. Once all is said and done and I got it running again, I'm going to synchronize the carburetors, which is, again, in here, they dedicate 5 pages to it, whereas they dedicate like 2 pages to the entire valve adjustment. Air filter, got another one right there. Coolant system, the water pump gasket I mentioned before, and this is just a bunch of parts I've been getting. I've only got some of them so far. And then miscellaneous tires. Tires, I only put maybe 2,000 miles on these after I got them changed, but again, that was quite a while ago, and these tires were manufactured in like 2010 maybe, so they're due. But I want to get it running first, then I'll look at changing those things out. Wheel adjustment screws on the back. One of those things is actually bent, which makes it really difficult to adjust it, so I just got new ones for both sides because it was about time for those. And left tank rubber, I'm missing one of those, something I forgot to write down, is the handle grips on here were always gross. Like I touched them, and I never worried about it because if I wore gloves I didn't feel it, but they were always like sticky. Now they're over there somewhere, but they were sticky. And I thought I was gonna have a point of, or a moment of vindication when people were watching the video where I replaced the Oxford heated grips on my V-Strom. And I was like, you know what, there's a good thing I didn't cut those off to make it way easier to get off. because these are nice grips, and I was going to put them right on here. And then I put them on. Well, they're too short, so I had to get these. Anyway, so I'm going to replace the grips. These are like some OEM replacements or lookalikes. $10 for the two of them. I mean, how can you say no to that? Anyway, so this is like $250 in. We're going to have another $150 for those. 200 whatever for tires. If I got to get intake boots, like I think they're going to cost $200. New set of shocks, forks, I should say. Probably $200 because I'm not going to get that thing out. I just know it. And I am going to go spend probably, what, $150 on an impact wrench and some more batteries. Just because I'm gonna try. That's just how it's going to go. And then I bought a Harbor Freight motorcycle tire changer with the tire changer. And because that thing doesn't work well without modifying it, I ended up buying this Mojo lever from the dude who sells them from his PayPal account. And I am just hemorrhaging money at this point. This is why I don't have money to do other things when people ask me if I want to do things. It's because I keep spending shit in my basement. So anyway, that's my plan. Sorry if anybody's watching these for Suzuki Bandit videos. I'm going to be out of the Bandit game for a little bit. Last thing I got to do is get that windscreen fastened and that thing's ready to go. But I am taking on my Leviathan here. And this is what I'm going to be working on. So if you watch to this point, I appreciate it. Thank you.